Hello, everybody. We're at 1:15, or yeah, 1:15, and the three committee members, three of us, Keith, Bob, and myself, make up a quorum. I think we should proceed with the meeting. Josh, before we really get started, Josh, if you notice, at least across the top of my screen, it says the meeting's being recorded. Josh has asked about posting this on the association website, and I don't have any problem with that. Does anybody object to that?
Not I.
Keith? How about you, Bob?
No problem.
Okay, well, Josh, go ahead, for better or worse. I'm going to call the meeting. It's the order is at 1:16. First order of business is the approval of the agenda, which has been posted up on the screen. Okay, there it is now. In one of my messages in the last 24 to 48 hours, I indicated that the agenda failed to pick up a documentation of the fact that we held a closed meeting at our last meeting, which was March 2020. And as a result of that, the minutes for this meeting have to record or document that fact in accordance with the HOA Act. And if there are no objections, what I'll do is read that into the record now, and we can also approve the agenda not at the same time, but I'll read it into the record, and then we can go from there on the agenda if there's any additions to it, additions or deletions. Bylaws and Resolutions Advisory Committee went to closed meeting March 6th, 2020 at 12:15 p.m. at the Ocean Pines Administration Building for the purpose of discussing committee members and liaison participation under the authority of HOA Act 11B-111, parentheses 4, parentheses I. Voting in favor of closing the meeting were committee members, and I have to alter this, Audrey Wall, Jeff Knepper, Keith Kaiser, and Jim Trummel. There were no votes in opposition, and there was no abstention. So that reads into record the necessary item to comply with the HOA requirements on a closed meeting. With regard to that, are there any additions or changes we need to make to the agenda?
Not for me.
I have none.
Okay, just a kind of a explanation. The unfinished business is blank. Actually, I could have put in as unfinished business items from our prior March meeting, but I did not feel that was worthwhile doing it that way. It's essentially new business starting from now anyway. Okay, the minutes, I distributed the minutes of the March 6th meeting, and Bob pointed out to me that I was mistaken in his presence being there. He was out of the country and in Australia, so that change needs to be made to the minutes. Does anybody have any other changes or comments on the minutes? Okay, going from there, we'll consider them approved. I see no indication of the public being here other than Josh. Josh, you have any comments you want to make?
No comment.
Okay, we'll continue on. Again, there's no unfinished business. The first agenda item is a discussion of the bylaws work group. And let me sort through my notes here. My paperwork, again, as I told Josh, is about 6 inches deep, and I tend to get that disorganized from the very beginning. I want to make some prepared comments on that so I don't miss anything. There was a bylaws work group was formed after an agenda item discussion at the November 18th, 2020 board meeting. The purpose was to identify bylaws issues and make recommendations to resolve those issues. As a result of that, the group that was formed consists of Doug Parks, board member Doug Parks, as the chair, and other members included Camilla Rogers, also a board member, and myself as chair of this committee, and Jenny Cropper Rhymes, who is the chair of the Communications Advisory Committee. The current bylaws are the result of a comprehensive review of the bylaws during the time period of 2005 to 2008 approximately. And that resulted in a referendum to approve a comprehensive revision to the bylaws during the 2008 director election annual meeting process. And that means that we're now well into the 13th year since those bylaws have been approved or were approved and have not had any revisions to the bylaws or amendments to the bylaws, nor has there been any kind of a comprehensive review of the bylaws. That it should be recognized, of course, that there is an ongoing resolution of a petition process that would, if approved and a referendum approved, would amend spending restrictions within the current bylaws. That's an ongoing situation that has not yet been finalized. Amendments to the bylaws, of course, require a referendum and a prior public hearing. The work group has established a target date for any referendum on recommendations to be this coming annual meeting election process that will occur in August, and with the lead up being in the June, July, August timeframe. That's a target date that's been set by the work group. So far, there have been 2 meetings of the work group, and there will be another meeting this coming Monday. The first meeting was simply a preliminary meeting, and the second meeting, which I unfortunately was late to getting to, although it was a virtual meeting, and that was my responsibility, and I unfortunately did not make it in time to be much of a participant. The approach that's been developed, and I think is certainly still open to discussion. Certainly, I want to discuss it here, and I want to take discussion to the next meeting of the work group, is that the work group would be making recommendations to the Bylaws and Resolutions Advisory Committee, and we would be the entity that takes a product for amendment of the bylaws to the board of directors for the board to consider for referendum purposes. There are a couple of discussion items that I want to go into with regard to this, and let me just briefly state them, and then we can come back and discuss to the extent we feel necessary. One item is, will the work group recommend specific wording of amendments, or would the input to our committee be the identification of provisions that are recommended for amendment and why there is such a recommendation? And from there, the Bylaws and Resolutions Committee would proceed from there to actually act on that recommendation in some manner or other, including drafting a recommended amendment to a provision to the board of directors. That's one discussion item. Will the input from the work group be as recommendations? Well, it's basically the same thing, or formulated as a final product. That's kind of 1A and 1B, if I can put it that way. Then this next item, or last item I have for discussion, is the nature of the communication between the work group and Bylaws and Resolutions regarding action on recommendations. Would it, for example, be step by step as the work group comes up with recommendations, or would it be as a final product of recommendations which we would act on? Now, I realize in that regard that there are 4 members of that work group, and 2 of them are participants in this committee. Me as the chair of the committee, and Camilla as the liaison. But there still has to be some, I'll call it formalization, I would believe, between the work group and the committee. But at any rate, those are 3 items that I want to bring before the committee for some discussion. One, going back to the first one, the role of the work group in relationship to our committee. Do we think that the work group would give us recommendations of provisions that need review or revision, amendment, and why they do need such amendment? And we would then take it from there to either agree or disagree, if I can put it that way, and assuming agreement, put together recommended wording for a new provision. That's basic. I put that item up for discussion. I think that in my opinion, let's put it this way, even if we got a recommended wording for a particular provision and the reason why it should be amended and why it should be amended in a particular way, I think we would have to take that as a recommendation and view it ourselves in our own way and come up with how we feel it should be how we feel such a provision should be amended. And I don't I didn't really consider this before right now, but even though should the work group not make a recommendation regarding a provision, if we see a provision that we think needs to be amended, I think we should do that as well. But I kind of rambled along here. I'm going to open that comment for discussion.
Okay, I've got some thoughts. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I got to move my volume up a little bit. That's all.
How's that? Is that better?
I'm good.
Okay,
Go
so
ahead.
first, I agree with what you just said in that no matter what we get from them, we're going to have to look at it and vet it to make sure that it fits in and that there's not any kind of tangential effects from that we need to be aware of. I agree with that. However, I think that the assessment group should attempt at least a draft final product, even if it was just bulletized. And the reason I say that is because, as you know, in our committee, when we start trying to work out final wording, during the discussion of figuring out that final wording, we discover elements of the issue that we hadn't thought about before, that we then have to sit, we got to sit and talk about it, right?
Yeah.
And they don't come to us until we're trying to figure out that final wording. So it would just be helpful from this group if they look at an area and say, hey, this area is out of date, this needs to be updated. And I think they should put that, even if it's draft and rough, or even if it's just bullets, into some sort of wording, because in the process of doing that, they're going to help form their thoughts, and they're going to realize aspects of the issue that they would not have otherwise realized. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense to me, certainly.
I think what's going to happen is if they don't do that, there's going to be a lot of back and forth, because they're going to send us something really rough or just basic. We're going to talk about it, and then we're going to wonder amongst ourselves, is that what they meant? You know, when they said this area needed to be updated, is that what they were talking about? Are we sure? And I think we're going to end up going back and forth a lot.
Okay, I'm in agreement with all that.
Yeah.
Bob, you got anything on that?
No, I agree 100%. because until we sit down and really go through it and then come up with all the questions, why they want to do it and what happened in the situation, we won't know. So if they give us a good draft, we get a good basis.
Okay. I'm looking at my notes here again, to make sure I'm not missing something. One of the things I think I kind of skipped in my my comments was the well, no, I didn't skip at that. What I said or may have said, and what I meant to say, might have been two different things. The comment that I intended to make with the work group intends to go from beginning to end of the bylaws. I'm getting a little feedback. Okay. Would the work group be passing on to us its recommendations as they come to a provision and make a decision on a provision or a section of the bylaws, section 1, 2, 3, 4 in sequence, for example? Or would they do it at a final product, everything all at once? My personal feeling is that it would be preferable for us to have them give us what they've got as they get it, rather than give us a whole package at the very end. So how does the committee feel about that?
I agree with that. I think it should be fed to us as they do it instead of one big giant pile.
Okay, Bob, I forget, couldn't tell who that was. Was that Keith or Bob?
That was me.
Okay.
No, I absolutely agree. If we take it a piece at a time, we can look at it and it may affect something down the line that they missed. So
Yeah.
I have a better chance of giving them prompt feedback.
Yeah. Okay. Let me make a quick look here to make sure I haven't communicated everything I wanted to about this project. I think so. So at any rate, if I can summarize this, this is feedback that I will take to the next work group meeting, which is this coming Monday morning, I believe at 9 o'clock. Is that we would want from them recommendations in the form of a draft or at least a bullet type explanatory draft, whatever, but at least we would want more than simply a recommendation that this particular provision be amended, and that we would prefer that as the work group develops its position or recommendations on a provision, that be communicated to us so that we can begin working on it promptly, and not deal with a completed package after the entire bylaws have been reviewed by the work group. Those two particular items I'll take to the work group at the next meeting. It seems to me there's something that went right through my mind that I neglected, forgot about, but I'll have to set whatever that was aside, and let's continue on. Anything else on the work group? Any other questions or comments or anything you may wish to feed back to the work group?
If they're going to start at the beginning and work their way through it, then it makes sense to segment it as they go.
Continue on. Yeah, I agree. Okay, let's keep going here on our next agenda item. Next agenda item is the elections process, in particular the elections resolution M06. Josh, along the way, you may have some stuff that you can put up there, but let me make a comment or two, and we'll get into it in more detail. there are two, in my view, there are two resolution items that came out of the 2020 election that have not been given, well, I'm going to say, public identification. And the first one has to do with how the election process avoids a duplicate ballot being cast for the same address, or multi-ballots being cast for the same address. There's one original, what I'll call original ballot envelope or ballot materials sent out to a single address, or for a single address. Let me rephrase that. And M06 in attachment A, paragraphs 7, 8, and 9 describe a process for avoiding a situation in where more than one ballot gets cast for the same address. If you can scroll down to 7 and 8, 7, 8, and 9, Josh, can we do that on the screen, or do you have to do that?
He's doing it. I can see it.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, for some reason I can't scroll very well, and I don't know why. Let me see if I can do this. It doesn't seem to want to go for me. I have a copy of the resolution in front of me, and I'll just use that as my reference. Give me a second to turn some pages.
Yeah, Jim, I have to scroll, so just let me know where you want to go and I'll pull it up.
Okay, let me look at 7. In 7 is receipt of ballots by the contractor, and the second sentence of 7 reads in so many words that the contractor stores the ballots. That prevents the ballot from being identified to the envelope in which it was returned. Envelopes marked as duplicates shall be delivered to the committee unopened, separate from other ballots. Then that means that the contractor has to open the envelopes, separate the ballots from the envelope they're received in, but he has to keep any envelope returned that's marked duplicate separate and unopened. Now in 8, and again, 7, 8, and 9 are not very well organized, and that's a deficiency of the resolution, which is open for being corrected. And what I did not say in the beginning, I am not bringing this forward in the context of saying what the committee did was wrong, elections committee did was wrong, just simply in the context that if this is going to go forward as the manner by which the duplicates are avoided, then M06 needs to be considered for resolution. But continue on in 8, just simply says that if a duplicate is requested, then the materials go out with a duplicate ballot identification for the return of the ballot. Then in 9, it says that the committee has to review the returned ballot envelopes, compare them with those that have been identified as duplicates, a duplicate ballot enclosed in the envelope and unopened, to make sure that there is no original ballot returned for the same address. Somewhat cumbersome process, no question, but that's been the process for years preceding. M06, and the committee came up with a way of indicating on the by a number on the bottom of the ballot. And there were, I don't know that you can put the ballot up if you've got it that I sent Josh, but there's a number on the bottom of the ballot on a tab on the bottom of the ballot, which could be removed and used to apparently by a scanning to prevent a duplicate for the same address to be cast. My only point in this is that we did not use the M06 process in the ballot number. The numbers at the bottom of you've not very easily seen, but this is the bottom of the ballot. Again, the intent is not to criticize the use of a method that would appear to be better than what is in M06. Is what I believe, what I will recommend is that we communicate to the elections committee that they need to, if they're going to continue with this process as opposed to what's M06 should be revised. They should put in for an amendment to the board to modify M06. So that's the perhaps lengthy dissertation on that particular item on the agenda. Does anybody have any comments on that?
I have one question, Jeff. Is the number, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Is the number in the bottom of the ballot that's unique to any duplicate ballot and unique to that property owner? Nobody else could ever have that number.
That's my understanding that that's the only number. Josh, do you have, I don't recall if I copied to you a posting of the elections chair to the Ocean Pines Forum that explained this process. Do you have that, Josh?
Yep, 1 sentence.
Okay. My apologies to Ocean Pines Forum. My screen is just blank, Josh.
No, mine's working fine.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, I don't know what my problem is.
Okay.
I had that somewhere in front of me, but don't have it right now. But in that message he posted, I believe it was posted to Joe Reynolds, who questioned it.
Right.
He explains the purpose of it. I don't recall how detailed its actual use was described. Again, I had a copy of it in front of me. Don't know, might have disappeared in my 6 inches of notes.
Jim, if you can get to the chat, I put the file in the chat.
Okay, now you're asking me for something that I don't know what to do.
You should see one of the options should be show conversation.
Okay, I got that.
And it should be the last thing in that chat. If you click on that, that should be the file.
What I have as the last item is the duplicate ballot.
Yep, click on that. That's what you named it.
Okay. I clicked on it and nothing's happening. Let me try this again. Open in browser, it says, all right. Oh boy, I hope I haven't lost you guys.
No, I still see you. I can hear you.
I can hear you.
Okay, how do I get back to where I was? That didn't help me any.
Are you using the app or are you using your web browser? For the
I used the web browser.
Can you find the web browser icon?
Let me look at what I'm trying to do here. That wasn't what I wanted. Okay. What do I do next? Josh, I may have to get out and start this all over again.
Okay.
I've got let me try something else here. I'm getting the Microsoft sign-in options. It's not doing me any good.
No, you're still in the meeting, so it's on there somewhere. You just gotta
All
find it.
right, I'm back. I'm all right. I'm back. I'm not picking up. I'm not picking up the item we're talking about. We can go ahead and proceed from there. I included the message simply to indicate the purpose of it. It does have a purpose, and I think it describes, if I can recall, describes the way in which it's used.
Mhm.
And it's again, the intention is to use that as the means of avoiding a duplicate ballot being cast and an original ballot as well. Two ballots or two or more ballots for the same property.
So I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
And so correct me if I'm understanding or if I'm not understanding this correctly. M06 describes a process whereby the envelopes are marked, right? And
That's correct.
if I understand it, the idea is that the ballots stay in the envelopes until the duplicate issue is resolved. Whereas this other process that you're showing on via this chat here is a process whereby the ballot itself is marked, which means the ballots would have to be removed from their envelopes and, I don't know, potentially run through a scanner or something, and then the scanner is going to say this is a duplicate. Am I reading that correctly? One is the envelopes marked and the other is the ballots marked?
Yeah, that's my understanding. Yes.
Is both the ballot and the envelope marked, or just the ballot now?
It sounds like just the ballot.
Yeah, it would be just the ballot. It is not necessarily clear in that regard.
Yeah.
I guess it could be said that the explanation addresses only the ballot and did not mention the envelope. That's a interesting or good point. Should not the ballot or should not the envelope also be identified as duplicate? But yeah, other than that being a question, I don't know why I have much else to say about that.
So we use a contractor to collect these ballots and then count them and ferret out the duplicates. Is that correct?
The contractor does not count ballots. The ballots are counted by the committee itself after the ballots are removed from envelopes.
So the contractor just creates the ballots?
No, what the election process is described in M06. As far as I know, it's being followed, or except for what we're talking about in this last election, is that the contractor receives the ballot return envelopes, and the contractor removes ballots from the envelopes except for those that are marked duplicate, and also retains the envelopes in a manner that you can go back and organize in an organized way, identify a particular property if necessary. In particular, if you get a duplicate, when you get a duplicate, you can identify the property of the duplicate without opening it, and then go to the storage of envelopes and see to it that there is no other original envelope from that property. So the contractor removes ballots from envelopes, stores the ballots, does not open duplicate ballot envelopes. And again, this is the way the resolution reads.
Yep.
Then the duplicate, unopened duplicates are to go to the committee, and as well as the unopened, I'm sorry, the opened envelopes. And the committee is responsible for taking the unopened duplicates, comparing them with what's received, and opened envelopes. And if there is a duplicate, the duplicate is discarded or set aside. That's the way M06 reads. Now, again, I don't have that message response in front of me. I don't think that addresses who does what as with regard to using the number or detaching. It says something about detachable tab, I believe. I don't think that response identifies who does what with red tab and when. Is that a correct? I've got it now somehow. Except I still don't seem to be able to scroll down. My scroll down is really intermittent. I haven't got that.
Well, just if you could let me know what you want to zoom in on, I can do that for you.
Go down, but just kind of keep going down. Right now I have the I see the last 4 or 5 lines, but I need to go up further than that.
So while you're looking at this, I guess one comment that I would make is normally ballots are not marked in any type of way that could make them identifiable to the voter. Normally, that's what the envelopes are for. You know, in a typical election, any kind of election, once you pull the ballot out of the envelope, it's not traceable back to the voter. So the method that's being described in this email on the forum is, it sounds to me, is a method by which a number is on the ballot itself that it sounds like can be traced back to the address. And if that's correct, I don't think that's right.
Okay. I understand and agree with that. That would be my understanding as well. Now, there is one comment I'll make. There is nothing in our bylaws, governing documents, or M06 for that matter, that mandates an anonymous ballot or an anonymous vote. What does accomplish that is the manner in which we process the ballots. And that is the contractor removes the ballot from any identifying property information, and that those ballots go to the election committee for counting. Now, and the variation on that is the duplicate ballot process in the currently in M06, but that still maintains an anonymous ballot. It's actually M06 and not any governing document provision, or I think I'm correct in saying nor any HOA HOA Act provision that mandates that a homeowners association must have an anonymous ballot process. That I just make that comment as a as what I believe is the correct information, so that I guess I'm saying nothing other than that the fact that there is a property identifier on the ballot does not in and of itself invalidate it with regard to our governing documents, including, I believe, the HOA Act. But it is certainly a consideration that I think you're suggesting, and I agree with, needs to be communicated back to the Elections Committee.
Yeah, exactly. So I think you're right in that it doesn't specifically require an anonymous process, but the process that's described in M06 provides a certain level of anonymity, right?
Yes,
So
and that,
I think that should be the feedback back to the committee is the intent to have an anonymous vote? If so, that it needs to be articulated in M06. And then any procedure thereafter to provide that needs to be updated if, between the two processes, which is going to be held. And I was thinking about it. I wonder if the reason that they went to marking the ballots is because some people attempted to turn in their ballots by, manually turn them in instead of mailing them back, and tried to do so without the original envelope.
well, if it comes back in something other than the supplied envelope, it's to be discarded. There's a provision in M06 that provides for that's one of the provisions that I'll say invalidates a ballot.
So if that's correct, then I don't know why they just don't stick with the process that's in M06.
Okay, well, I'm just guessing. Apparently there's some efficiencies in that. Other than to say that, I don't really know.
Well, I agree with the basic premise that there needs to be some sort of feedback to the election committee to align either M06 to the new process or to align the process to M06. And also, I think there needs to be a recommendation to specifically address whether or not the intent is for the vote to be anonymous.
Okay. All right, I've got that part. Bob, do you have any further comments on it?
No, my question was, and I think you answered it, is does the Maryland Homeowners Act require that it be anonymous?
No, my research in the past has been there's no what I'll call legal requirement that we have a anonymous balloting process.
Okay, and then if there's none, I think what Keith just said makes sense. Either define what it is and your method for controlling it and make it match what you're sending out. But I thought that the envelope I received did have a number on it as well as the ballot.
What you get should have a property identifier on it. It's what you return will also have a property identifier of some kind on it, as I recall. Let me put it that way. Yeah. But when you remove the ballot from the envelope, you no longer can, as long as you physically separate them, you no longer can attribute the ballot to a particular property.
Right.
Okay, that is one item. The other item has to do with a provision that's in the basic text of the M06 amendment. It's paragraph 5. I believe it's paragraph 5A. It has to do with additional candidates.
Oh, the date issue.
Yeah. Yeah, it is paragraph 5A. And the announcement of the additional candidates by the board, which was by the then vice president on behalf of the board, I think is the way it can be phrased, varied from what's in M06. In this past election, there were only 3 candidates, and the bylaws call for attempting to have at least 2 more. candidates than the number of candidates or number of seats available in the election, which in this case would have been at least 4, and there were only 3 candidates originally filed. And the final result was there were only 3 on the ballot. The resolution calls for additional candidate applications to be made no later than the 3rd Friday of June. The announcement by the I'll call it the announcement by the board for seeking additional candidates refers to the bylaws provisions and states that that date for the election, this past election, would have been July 3rd, which is a date derived from the bylaws as the date by which the materials must go to the secretary for the secretary's review of materials being sent out.
Right.
I am the one who drafted the provision that we're talking about in M06. The bylaws say that the materials must be to the secretary by the 1st Friday in July, no later than the 1st Friday in July.
Right.
The way the announcement read is that that is the date that the additional candidates have until to file their application. In other words, you can run up right to the end of the work hours on the 3rd Friday, or the first Friday of July, and submit your additional candidate application. When I wrote that provision of the 3rd Friday in June, 3rd Friday in June, I took, some may say, liberal advantage of where it says no later than the 1st Friday in July, to put in an earlier date, which I considered reasonable for additional candidates. We'd gone all through a candidate application process. Now we had extended it, a reasonable date to allow the elections committee to continue with, in an orderly manner, the rest of the election process in preparation of having materials sent to the secretary for the secretary to have them or approve them to be sent to the printing contractor. And that includes such things as candidates being able to get into the election forum or the election debate between candidates, if you want to call it that. That date, 3rd Friday in July, was selected as being a reasonable date for an additional candidate to make application and still allow to provide to continue to go forward in an orderly process with all the other details that they had to do to be prepared for send materials to the contractor or to the secretary initially, and to the contractor, including bios and other information, answers to questions and that sort of thing that is a part of the election materials. So that's the reason for it. Now, if that's wrong, if it should be up to the end of business hours on that 1st Friday in July, and that rigid a reading of the bylaws, fine with me. But we can't have M06, or my opinion, we can't have M06 saying one thing and then a formal announcement out of the association saying something else. That would be my shorthand comment is, the two need to be reconciled. M06 and the way it was handled in this past election with regard to additional comments. How it's reconciled, that's another question. That's not up. I'm not asking to say what's right or wrong. I'm just saying that it needs to be reconciled.
I agree with that.
Yes.
Okay, okay. If there's no other discussion on that, let's keep going. We're running pretty long right now. A third item that I'm going to bring up, and this is me personally, and I want to make sure that that's understood. I didn't like the idea that a survey question was on the ballot. I thought the propriety of that was questionable. Yeah, I would prefer to see the ballot in particular to have only the ballot on it. Now, if there was a referendum, I'm not sure in the past if the referendum was on the same ballot as the directors or not. Whether there was another, their uses cards are scanned, ballots are scanned to count them. I don't recall whether we had the ballot yes, no marking on the same, I'm sorry, the referendum marking on the same ballot as directors when there has been a referendum at the same time of the election or not, whether there's a separate referendum card to be scanned. I honestly don't remember that, but I don't, at any event, I just don't consider a survey question which has no relevance to the governance of the association belongs on a ballot for election of directors. That's my opinion, and if I was the only guy in this, that's what I would feed back to the elections committee. But it's up for discussion. Let's put it that way.
Well, it's an open-ended question because it really doesn't say anything. You know, what do you mean by electronic ballot?
Well, yeah, I'm not too. I'm trying to figure out how to say this. Not too interested. I'm not too interested in the wording of what was on the ballot. My concern is it didn't belong on the ballot, whatever it said. If it doesn't deal with the governance of the association, it doesn't belong on a ballot with the election of directors. If it's not a referendum question to answer yes or no, it didn't belong on that ballot. And again, I don't recall whether we had separate ballot documents for directors and a referendum question when they were both in the same election materials. I don't remember. But in this case, a non-governance question with no binding matter at all on the association was on the ballot, electing directors to the board of electing persons to the board of directors. I just didn't think that was appropriate use of the ballot.
I agree with that.
I guess I agree in general with your sentiment. I suppose there could be confusion by some people who think that the question is more than just an unbinding, non-binding survey question. They may think it's something that they're actually voting on. And there's probably no reason to put anything on the ballot that's going to cause any level of confusion and to muck anything up. So I agree with what you're saying in principle. It's probably not the appropriate place for it.
Yeah. Another and this again, I don't want to make points that are of significantly minor consequence, but one of the things that was deleted from the election process in M06 when it was initially released about 2010 or so, 2010 maybe 2000, latest 2012, we eliminated write-in candidacy. So there's a number of reasons why that's impractical anyway. In particular, you have to be a candidate, you have to agree to serve on the board. And there's no real way for a write-in candidate to do that. But we removed that from a write-in candidacy provision from the elections resolution from M06. It was in the prior resolution to M06, simply because people were writing in Daffy Duck, Minnie Mouse, and whatever. And also, among the reasons for rejecting a ballot is for it to be defaced. That's not exactly what it says in the resolution, I believe. But what happens if somebody effectively defaces the ballot in some manner as a result of that, of a question being on the ballot? What's the election committee going to do? Again, that's just me letting my imagination run wild, perhaps. But leave on the ballot what should be on the ballot, and that's elect the directors is just the way I feel about it. Okay, I'll communicate back to our what I will do is communicate all of this back directly to the elections committee chair, as well as the elections committee liaison, so that they both have this information. Anything else? Anything further on this before we go to some more, perhaps less concentrated topics? Okay, let me keep going here. We're down to items involving 3 F resolutions, and what I intend to do on these, I will communicate any comments, whatever comments we have, if any, to our liaison, as opposed, these are all board, effectively board-related resolution items. My intent would be to communicate these to any comments to our liaison, not to the board directly. First one's F02. This is one that's been hanging around for probably 2 or 3 years now, and a review of F02 for its current adequacy. This is one of those resolutions that has what amounts to a built-in review time, and that's after every budget is approved. It would be, I think, prudent for it's a board action resolution. There are other interested parties, of course, very much so, the general manager and the budget and finance committee. But every year after the budget is approved, I think it's prudent for there to be a review. Is okay, we just finished the budget. Is this what we're doing, or do we need to make some changes? Now, in particular, if you go to the reports section of the resolution, which is basically the final part of the resolution, you'll see that it specifies reporting content and is to the general manager making these reports, and there's provisions in the resolution, the reporting, when there's 5% differences and recommendations have to be made when such differences occur, and how truly is that being done the way it's being said in the resolution. A very minor point, but a point is that in the middle of 7A, it says, I'm looking here to figure out where report shall include a summary report, a report for each department, include capital and reserve accounts. So reserve account reporting is being done by the treasurer. No big deal. I don't, it's fine with me, except that this says that the general manager is going to report all of that sort of thing. And again, there's the 5% reporting, and in an earlier paragraph, 5% is repeated with a provision that regarding recommendations for how to avoid an overrun through the end of the year. I simply think we should be asking that they look at the reporting, and I can list in there also the issue regarding percentage differences, that sort of thing. My thinking would be that to the maximum extent possible, they try to generalize what is reported. Yes, I know the general manager does and most likely should be the one who has the lead responsibility in there. It but leaves some generalness as to how he reports, what he reports. I know that I don't study in detail the financial, personally don't study in detail all of the financials at a board meeting. But I do take note that there's been an evolution, and I believe the general manager in his reporting of the financial affairs has, in so many words, given reference to an evolution of how the financials are reported. My thinking is that whoever, and I don't want this committee, my personal opinion again, to be the ones supplying words for this resolution or rewriting this resolution. The original resolution itself was written by a then president of the board and a member of the board who was also the treasurer of the board at one time. It's their resolution, neither one of, well, not active, let me put it that way, in association affairs. I don't think we want to be suggesting words, but as much as of a generalization that gives the general manager the flexibility in how he reports, as well as who reports what may be. And the board always can redirect for a meeting or a continuation for a period of time, for whatever length of time, how it wants things to be reported, and to be able to do so and not have to rewrite a resolution to do that. There are another minor item is that the resolution says the budget's approved by February 20th, 28th, and that's always been a minor dispute. That's not what the bylaws say. Well, the bylaws say it has to be approved by a certain date, or you stuck with the budget for the last year. But that February 28th date probably needs to be revised into some more general statement of approval than it is now. At any rate, those are my comments on the resolution. At any rate, I would like to see us at least communicate back to the board. Again, I would do it through the liaison, that this resolution is due for a thorough look at and determine whether it reads the way the board wants it to read. That's enough a comment out of me.
I agree. There's plenty there to look at.
Okay. Bob, anything you want to add?
No, I think that now is the opportunity for the board, when they're looking at the bylaws, to fix that date issue when the budget is to be approved.
Well, that could be brought up. I have my doubts that the bylaws they're going to be much of a interest in changing the bylaws. I don't know that there's a Homeowners Act provision regarding approval dates, but I'd have to look at it. But the February 28th approval date has always been I don't want to say always, has frequently been a source of confusion and unnecessary conflict, if I can put it that way, because the bylaws do not specifically say February 28th. They say by the 15th or so, middle or whatever it is of April, I believe, or maybe March, I'm not sure now. Without getting the bylaws out, I don't want to do that.
No.
At any rate, I'll make these I'll add these comments to whatever else we have on these resolutions. Okay, F03. Josh, do you have that?
Yep, 1 second.
Okay. Whilst Josh is putting something up, I've noticed in the last several board meetings, when the treasurer reports, he includes a report on the reserve fund status. Now, for whatever reason, I again get I don't know if it's something I'm doing or not. My copy of what you've got up is blurred. Not blurred, but it's blocked out by something. At any rate, in the resolution, there are four different reserve funds that are identified, and the bylaws require that there be a resolution that effectively creates, okay, it shows now capital assets reserve replacement, which is probably the biggest or main one, and is roads maintenance reserve. And it disappeared on me now, but
We can see it. I can see it.
okay. Okay, there's a new capital, and I forgot what the other one was. What, can somebody read off the four again?
Yeah, there's capital assets replacement reserve, roads maintenance reserve, bulkhead and waterway reserve, and new capital reserve.
Okay. It was at the October meeting that, in the board meeting I'm talking about, and the subsequent board meetings, including the most recent meeting, that when the treasurer displayed the reserve fund status, he had drainage separated out from roads, from the roads maintenance reserve. Up until then, the roads maintenance was being shown as a road/drainage. Now, in the most recent, again, last 3 or so board meetings, drainage has been shown as a separate reserve fund. However, there is no resolution reference to that fund. And again, the bylaws have to, the bylaws require that a resolution identify the reserve funds. And if you see here, under roads maintenance, it says this reserve is for the maintenance of association's road system and associated drainage and other related maintenance requirements. My only point is that they're, we're displaying information not in the manner that is required by the bylaws and the resolution. It can be, people can view that as a minor item, except that it's attention to details. That's not how our governing documents direct it that we do it. And I have no idea what the reasoning is behind how it's been displayed. I think there has been some discussion in the meetings regarding drainage and the funding of drainage, but I haven't followed it that closely. I'm just interested in making sure that we follow our bylaws and resolution requirements. That kind of comes under the update of review of the governance documents, but this is a specific item that I think should be again referred back to the board. Yeah. Any further comments on that?
I agree with what you said.
Okay. I'll just chalk that off. Last item is the least of the items. The F04 resolution requires that the committee meet It consists of the treasurer, the chief financial officer. I think the title may be controller on the organization chart. I'm not sure. And 2 or 3 other people are to meet and review the delinquent assessment policy, and then report on that back to the board. To the best of what I can tell, there has not been any such meeting of that committee or report to the board for about 2 years now. There are probably a couple of good reasons. One, a couple of years ago, we were in the midst of a general manager turnover, and some things could easily get bypassed. I think perhaps our financial officer was in flux at that time as well. I don't remember for sure. And a year ago, we're deep into or at least beginning to get deep into the current COVID-19 situation, which certainly disrupted many things. There was some question raised at the executive council meeting last fall about whether or not this report literally has to be discussed at the board of directors. It doesn't say that. It just simply says in the resolution that it has to be, that a report has to be given back to the board. I personally think when a report comes to the board, that it needs to be publicly acknowledged. You know, how much acknowledged may be an open question of judgment or discretion or however, but that's a kind of a side issue. My purpose in bringing this up is I think it's a legitimate item for us to point out to the board that this has not been done in the past, and it's a resolution requirement that needs to be complied with. Any comments?
Yeah, sorry. Complied with or updated via the required processes.
Okay, that's an omission that I should have known better to have included. That's certainly, I agree, certainly.
Yep.
All of this is either change our ways or revise the resolution if we're not meeting the resolution. Each of these, and the same as any other resolution that needs some review. If you're not doing it, change it to what you're doing. And in a couple of cases, we know that it's either not been being done or has not been done. And that's a point that should be duly made.
I agree.
Okay, anybody else?
No, I agree with you.
All right. There was one item. I realized I meant to say it and didn't, back under M06. Again, this is a personal item, if I may. The voting instruction sheet, which I have, but I didn't send it to Josh. In there is a reference to voting materials going out to members in good standing. I have, perhaps on the behalf of a couple of members of this committee who date back a number of years and are no longer either members of the association or no longer available, if I can put it that way. It's kind of a pet peeve of theirs that they had deleted from the bylaws as they currently exist, the definition of a member in good standing. If you go to the bylaws that existed prior to 2008, it defined member in good standing, and virtually everything a member could do governance-wise, you had to be a member in good standing. And a joke that was common at that time was that if you're not a member in good standing, would, the way it was phrased, if you had a violation for jaywalking, you were not a member in good standing. The definition of member in good standing was broad enough in the negative sense that you could be found not in good standing for a wide variety of things, and that included eligibility to vote. Now, eligibility to vote was significantly pared down to a lot. Primarily, you're up to date in your assessments. That was not the only thing, but that's the primary thing. And they expressed considerable frustration over time that everybody would keep using member in good standing, and I've kind of carried on that campaign in their behalf. And I would like to include on my MO6 comments to please don't use member in good standing in the voting instructions in future elections. I'm sure that the member in good standing page that goes, the voting instructions page that goes with the voting materials is no more than a change the date and reprint what's been used for a number of years. But I will include that unless there is objection to our MO6 comments. And that's enough of the trivia for right now.
So let me just make sure I understand this. So the recommendation is either to not use the term since it's not defined, or if you're going to use the term, define it in the appropriate documents.
Yeah, that would be the bylaws.
Right.
All
I
right.
agree with that.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Right. All right. I think we're down to the governing document or governance document, if I can refer to that. I'm laughing too, Bob. To say we're out of date is an understatement, and I don't think we're going to be able to straighten it all out today. Let's put it that way, but at least start the groundwork for it. When we get started here, Bob, if I can make something that I have not noted before now, in the effective date, almost exclusively, if not entirely, we're picking up the original date for the resolutions that are listed there. What we really probably should be doing is going back through the resolutions as they appear on the website and pick up the current effective date. For example, a couple of examples. Our M01, the effective date is 12/16/2009. Well, it was the new M01, that's the compliance, property compliance procedures. The new M01, which is a complete revision, is May 2nd, 2020. And there are other, M06 is the same thing. It's been revised numerous times since, not numerous, 3 or 4 times maybe, or 3 maybe since 2013. I guess 2013 was its original issue date. I don't remember now, but it's certainly not been, there's a more recent effective date than 2013. So I think one thing that can be done, Bob, and I know what this means, is going on the website and go revision or resolution by resolution. I think we should be picking an effective date of what the effective date shows on the most recent resolution.
Okay, that's not a problem.
All right,
Now, what about last review date?
well, those can stand for right now. Again, I don't know how deep we want to get into this today, but when some of those effective, like the M0, I'm looking at a different resolution, the M01, May 2nd, 2020 certainly can have an impact on the obviously that has an impact on the last review date and the next review date. Well, why don't we start at the top, so to speak, and go from there. In other words, go up to B01. I don't know what to say about the whole series in there have a next review date of 2020, and we're in February 2021 now, obviously.
Mhm.
And all of those are board responsibility, and I don't see it being very productive to make a list of all these and send it to either Camilla or to the board president and say, hey, please review these and report back to us.
Mhm.
Whether you're happy or not happy with them. There is one, however, there's one item that I'd like to put a possible current interest, let me put it that way. And that's B05, conflict of interest, and B08, director ethics and conduct. One of the recent board meetings, excuse me, and I don't recall, I tried to make a quick scan of the minutes of meetings, recent meetings, and didn't see it. The board has formed a work group of board members, if I remember correctly, maybe 3 members, to review B08 and its provisions. And if I recall correctly, it's in particular involving complaints about directors, and to report back to the board recommendations. Well, completely unrelated to that, and something that's been there for some time but has not been addressed, is that the conflict of interest provisions, again, I don't want to dig out resolutions and try to identify provisions, but there is a difference between how conflict of interest is phrased in B08 and how it is phrased in B05. And this pertains in particular, I believe, to its expressions, how it's expressed regarding directors and perhaps officers. A major item, no. It's just simply the wording is not really that consistent. It doesn't mean that there's a major conflict. It's just what's a conflict of interest in one is okay in the other. No, it's that there's incomplete expressions if you put one up against the other. And I think that's a legitimate. I think it's legitimate that we can note B05 referred to, we can put referred to the liaison, because that's who I will send this to. If whatever comment we're going to send, I'll send to the liaison. Refer to the liaison for comparison with conflict of interest provisions in B08.
Okay.
I don't have a date, but I think we can also say on B08, it's undergoing a work group review, a review of a board of members work group, board of directors member. So however we want to say it, it's undergoing a work group review at the board of directors as of this date. It's not as of this literal date, but for us, it's as of this date. When I can try to dig out an actual date later.
Okay.
So I would leave, for the time being, I'd leave the rest of the Bs as they are, and we can give it more serious thought as we continue to go on, so that we don't just keep going on today on stuff that may not have, it's not urgent nor particularly current, like the B05 would at least be some relevantly current. In the C resolutions, there are a couple of things that we can make note of at this time. Again, I don't think it's too much of a point to be going back. There's a lot of 2020 reviews again. I think we can leave that for right now. although Bob, when you go through the resolutions, you don't necessarily need to make an immediate note of it now. There is an update of C01. That's one of the things that I knew of and brought my attention to the effective date column. That was reviewed by us at our committee level, and subsequently the amendments to it. But they added 2 new attachments to it, and we reviewed it in our committee. I don't know, was in our minutes. I don't remember if it was in our March minutes or not. I think it was in the, I guess it was, yeah, because that referenced Colette Horn being there. It was subsequently updated, so it's May 21. Date will of course change, but I just note that going on by. The same was with C02 was updated as well as a result of M01 being updated. The one C05, we can make this notation that committee was suspended. That's the clubs committee. That committee was suspended at a board meeting dated 9/9/2020.
Okay. Committee suspended, okay.
And also on the committee, the Racket Sports Committee was reinstated by the board at the board meeting of December 14th, 2020.
Which one now?
C14, Racket Sports.
Okay. Reinstated, okay.
Yeah, no, that was reinstated with the resolution as is.
Okay. What was the date of that?
December 14th, 2020 board meeting.
Okay.
And again, there's 1 or 2 dates on there that are review dates are passed. Actually, in many cases, these committees are not meeting. I don't know if Josh, you're still on here, are you? I don't hear Josh.
He must be there. He's changing the slides.
Yeah, I was stuck in the slides. I'm still here.
Josh, is it a correct statement that many committees are still not meeting? Architectural review is, bylaws and resolutions, budget and finance, of course, is, communications, I think has or will be, and environment and natural assets has on occasion at least, but most committees are not currently meeting. Is that still true?
I think it's about half and half. The elections committee just scheduled a meeting, their first and since the election. So
What date is their meeting?
1 second.
That's just kind of because we have comments to go back to them. Yeah, if I have to stay up till midnight getting them out, I guess I will.
They're going to meet up at 12.
Hopefully not.
February 12th at 10 a.m. and that is a virtual meeting.
Okay, well, I got a little bit of time. Okay, well.
On the calendar, elections, architectural, communications, and bylaws right now. And I know budget and finances as well. But I think that's
okay.
it.
Okay. Okay, well, we can, I think we can, those are on the, those committee meetings are all show on the committee calendar. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, well, I can take what can be done is we can take off of those, this calendar showing who's meeting, and the our next meeting, make the determination of who's due and who isn't due. Most of them probably will be due, but let's hold off on that determination until we see who actually is a candidate to actually be looking at their own resolution. In the M series, I'm looking at our comments. I didn't actually look at MO2 to see. It says that the second reading was approved at the 11/2/2019 board meeting. So that means the effective date can be changed. And that also would mean that the review date probably would be 2 years out, and it would go out to, well, we got November 2021 already. So actually M02, about the only thing you'd want to do is change that date to whatever the
Right.
effective date should be, that date, November 2nd.
Okay. I'll go through and update all the effective dates, put the notes on that you gave me, and then we'll have something to start fresh at the next meeting.
Okay. The note on M04 can be deleted. It had, a change was made.
Okay.
C, the note on M05 can remain there. To my knowledge, it has not been done, and I will include that on my note to the liaison about what we've done at this meeting and what we need follow-up on. To my
Okay.
knowledge, that has not, I've not received any feedback. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
M06, we've already, we can note that we're making comments to the committee in whatever words you want to use.
Okay.
M07 is the same thing as M05. I'll add that to, again, I'll add that communication needs to be reaffirmed, if I can put it that way.
Okay.
Leave the note on, you got to update the note on M08. That again is not an item that needs to be followed up immediately. I have my doubts after this resolution now being 10 years old, probably is not very worthwhile, or may not be very, very worthwhile. It's what can be called a blue sky resolution or a blue sky law, something that you want to make the world great and glorious, but nobody really cares about it.
Right.
And it doesn't serve a useful purpose. Let me more professionally say it that way. And that needs to be considered. It's going to be reviewed. It just doesn't need to be reviewed and something sent out today.
Mm-hmm.
Search committee, that's going to have to be considered. We're not close to getting, well, we're going to be close to getting there in the work committee, the work group, I'm sorry, on bylaws. You could put down there bylaws work group issue, and because it's going to have to be considered in some manner or another by the work group. Either we're going to have the search committee and do the resolution, appoint a committee and do the resolution, or we're going to do something else. So,
Yeah.
and to be frank about it, that's going to be it has been my thinking, and I kind of think I've formally communicated it to the work group that, we either do it or we don't. Change the bylaws if we're not.
Right.
Okay, I've kind of breezed through there, Bob. I don't want to take you. I don't want to take the governance document away from you. You got anything else you want? Although I think you got enough work for right now.
Yes, I think we got enough.
Okay, guys, I've reached the end of my thinking, my meditating, my mumbling, and the agenda. Anybody have anything else they want to talk about?
I don't.
Next meeting.
Did we schedule that? I think Bob, I'm sorry.
It's going to
Josh?
change.
Well, I hope not. Josh, can you access our meeting schedule? I don't have it.
I have it right here, I think.
Yeah, it looks like you're scheduled for March 5th
Right.
and April 2nd.
Right.
March 5th, I assume, without looking at my calendar, is the first Friday in March.
First Friday at 1 o'clock.
It is.
Oh, that's good for me.
April 2nd, same thing. First Friday, 1 o'clock.
Okay, those were all good before for me, and they're still good. So
they're good for me.
Okay. All right. Anybody want to make a movement to adjourn this meeting?
So
I'll
moved.
make a motion.
All right, Keith moved to adjourn. Bob, I'm going to, you seconded. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
But Josh, you can vote if you want to.
We could use the extra vote.
All right, anybody else before we all sign off?
Yep.
Nope. Good meeting.
Okay, everybody stay healthy.
Okay, you do the same. Be careful.
All right, will do.
Bye.
Bye.